Welcome, welcome one and all. Winter Wizard here. And in this video, I'm going to be showing you my approach to painting frost blades. For joining me today, whoever you are, and welcome to this little video of mine where I'm going to be showing you how I like to paint frost blades. Well, it's cold and lonely here in Winter Wizard's Frozen Fortress, but we've just made a lovely cup of tea over there, and I'm joined as always by my comrade and co-host, Norwegian Troll Dimmu, so this is going to be nice. We've got another installment here of winter weather weaponry for you. So perhaps you're wondering, winter weather weaponry, what does that mean? So let me explain just very quickly for you. I have a Space Wolves army called the Great Company of Frostpaws, and there's a few sort of items of weaponry that you'll find in the Space Wolves army, things like thunder hammers, storm shields, lightning claws, and what I noticed is that these weapons, they all sort of have a weather element sort of featured in the name of the weapons. Like I just said, frost blades, like frost, storm shields, like the storm, thunder hammers, lightning claws, you get the idea. So. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to create a slightly individual, slightly unique approach to painting these weapons to make them a bit of a feature. And that feature is taking inspiration from the weather feature that they're named from. So I've got a video already for the thunder hammers. I've created kind of like a thunder cloud, sort of storm cloud, kind of dark greys and blacks, patchy sort of vibe on the hammers. Lightning claws are paid to sort of resemble strikes of lightning. And in this video today, I'm going to be taking a look at frost blades. So we've got a small selection of paints up here that we're going to be using. Quite simple. We've got a base paint of Corax White here. And this is miniatures paint, so it's just one that I acquired, but if you was going to use Citadel, you could use White Scar. This is a lighter white than the Corax White. So we've got the two whites here, the base one there, which is just kind of a little bit of a greyish sort of white, and a much brighter sort of bolder white here, which is, I think, a little bit more transparent as well. So we're going to be using this for some highlights. So if you're using Citadel, some White Scar. But then we've got some layer here, Baharoth Blue, and a shade of Drakenof Nightshade, and then a couple of technical paints over here. We've got some Lahmian Medium. This is for diluting your paints. It's kind of like we've got flow improver and some diluting aid and that sort of things in there. And we're going to be using some gloss varnish as well. Again, this is miniatures paints, but you could use your Citadel hard coat. Or any paint brand really. They do all seem to make their own versions of gloss varnish, but this is going to be this is going to be the last thing that we do, just to create a little bit of a shine, a little bit of a sheen for this frosty effect. So those are all the paints that we're going to need, and I've got a Space Wolves frost sword here that we're going to be painting up. I've already primed it, sprayed it. You can spray it any colour that you like really. I start my Space Wolves off with a nice grey, but I've actually sprayed this with a gunmetal. Started at a metal colour, so this is just army painter sprays. Very nice indeed. But any of your preferred primers will do. But I always find that grey or silver is usually a good place to start. Okay, so we've zoomed in. We're going to get started here. We've got the sword there, as you can see, and I've just got a base brush here, wet palette over there. We're going to start with the Corax White. So always give your paints a good shake. I'm going to take a little bit of this onto the wet palette, and we're going to load this up onto the blade. Make sure we do a nice thin, smooth coat with this. We don't want to clog up any of the nice engraved detail, but this will be the first thing that we're going to do. We're just going to apply a nice thin layer of this all over the blade. It's coming out a little bit watery there. Might have a little bit too much water on my wet palette, but that's okay. Just as long as it's nice and smooth. And then if we need to do a couple of layers, that's perfect, just build it up from there. So I'm going to start by covering this in a nice layer of Corax White. So you can see the Corax White is now nice and dry. Done a couple of very thin layers there, Got a nice smooth coat there. I've stuck the sword on in a knob of blue tack and on my painting handle here, just so it's easier to hold. And there we go. So that's the trick. You see the runes in there; they're still nice and prominent. They're not clogged up, and that's one of the reasons why we do lovely smooth thin layers. So next thing we're going to do. This is winter weather weaponry. So we're going to try and create a. I'm trying to create a colour scheme inspired by the weather feature, and the weather feature is frost blades. But so what I'm going to try and do is create a sort of effect that's going to resemble a frosty shard of ice, basically. So sort of like a blade made of pure ice. So the next thing we're going to do, now that that's fully dry, is we're going to bring out the Baharoth Blue and the Lahmian Medium. So we've got the Baharoth Blue and the Lahmian Medium here ready to go. So the trick with this is we want to do about 50-50. So if you've I've actually got a separate brush here just to pull this out. You don't want to be using the same brush in the same pot, otherwise you could contaminate it. You won't be able to see this on the palette as it is clear, but what I've got here is basically 3 brush blobs worth of the medium there. And then I'm going to bring out, I use the same brush for this pot, about just to the right of it, 1, 2, 3 brush worth of Baharoth Blue. So these are now next to each other, and what we can then do is start mixing them together by bringing them into each other and creating a mix in the middle. And this should create a nice sort of half and half mix. What we're almost doing is kind of creating almost like a bit of a glaze with this blue, and I'm actually going to get a bit of medium back here, put that to the side there, a little bit more of that, and bring that in. This blue is the Baharoth Blue was quite gloopy when I got it out of the pot, so let's just take another couple of dollops of this. Get a nice consistency, a nice sort of glazy consistency. There we go. So start with 50-50. If you feel like you need to add more, then go ahead. We're trying to create a bit of a glaze here. So there we go. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to take that blue and offload it onto the blade here. So I'm going to just put that all over it, and you can see the transparency there. It's not covering it with a smooth solid coat. It's giving it a nice glaze. You still got a lot of that white coming through, so just do a nice glaze over the top. Like so. And I'd say don't go overboard at first. I've realised I've made loads of this on the palette, which is probably not necessary at all. Just helping you to see how it works. There we go. So we're going to just load this up nice and smooth all over that, and then we're going to let it dry before we think about possibly adding some more. There we go. So we'll let that dry. Okay, so that's the Baharoth Blue and the Lahmian Medium glaze, nice and dry, and you can see how it's flooded all the runes, all the details, really made them pop. It's really nice. Next thing we're going to do, add a little bit of colour to this. So I'm going to add some Drakenof Nightshade, and again we're going to be doing the same principle here. We're going to put some Lahmian Medium on the palette first, a couple of dollops of that, and then we're going to take a bit of the Drakenof Nightshade, a couple of dollops of that, mix that together, and thin down this wash, because it'll go on very strong if we don't. Seems about right. Just rinsing that out. Maybe add in just a little bit more Lahmian there. Again, I've gone a bit stronger with the Lahmian Medium in this one, and it's not quite a 50-50. I don't want this to be too dark. And what you can do is you can always add layers. You can always add more. It's difficult to take it off. So we've got this nice white base coat and the nice sort of icy blue colour going on to start with. Now we're going to add some of this blue, some of the darker stuff. It's going to be a little bit sort of subjective as to where we want to put this. But what I would suggest is definitely down towards the base of the blade. So I'm just going to blot this on and let some of that run off. And slide it on out, like so. Around the other side. So definitely around the base, where this skull is. It's kind of engraved skull in the blade, I'm thinking. And a bit of the darker blue around there to make that sort of bring that out. And then as it gets to the end, maybe lighten it up. And you can, what I've kind of done here is added a little bit of the darker colour up the top and then a little bit of the darker colour down the bottom, but on the opposite side, so it's not one smooth, it's not one whole shade. You've got the sort of mingling of the shades going on here, like so. Flick around again, do a little bit of that on this side. Darker at the top on that side, darker at the bottom on this side, lighter at the top on that side, lighter on this side. Just kind of use your discretion to create the effect. We'll flood just a little bit of the darker colour into the runes. What I sometimes like to do is, it depends on the weapon and how it looks really. Sometimes I like to flood those runes with a real bright white. But in this case I think they're going to look quite nice with the darker shade. I think they're going to pop out quite nicely, so I'm going to leave those darker. And there we go. Do a kind of smooth, sort of a delicate layer of this in the bits that you want. Start building up those darker shades, and then we're going to let this fully dry, and then we might come back and add just a little bit more of this. This is what I'm talking about. Let it dry, then add a little bit more here and there, and create that sort of those nice blended transitions there. Kind of just add it where you think it's going to look nice. So there, I'm going to stop playing with this and let it dry, and then see about adding some more. So the first application of the watered down the Lahmian Medium Drakenof Nightshade mix is dry, so we're going to add a little bit more. So just pick the areas that we want to be a bit darker. We really want to build them up and add a little bit more of this mix onto them. Just by blotting it on, letting it sit there, letting it dry. Like so. Add a little bit more there. I'm going to add a little bit more to that skull down there, make that quite dark around the base of the blade. And on this side, add, I'm thinking, a bit more to here, a little bit more on that side. Remember what I said about sort of maybe doing darker towards the bottom on one side, light, darker towards the top on the other, maybe. Just trying to create a bit of a pattern. And there we go. Like so. Just a little bit more there. And I might just drop a little bit into those runes. A bit there. And the point of adding the two colours, it just gives it a nice mix, I think, a nice blend, nice sort of variety of the different colours. You've got the white, and then the lighter blue and the darker blue. Seems to sort of work quite nicely. Look a little bit plain, perhaps, with just the one shade. And there we go. It's not an exact science. You could take hours doing this kind of thing. You know, and there's a fair few videos out there doing doing the power blades and stuff like that with all the blended work. But I wanted to create something a little bit more, just a little bit more straightforward, a bit more simple, and much less time consuming. And there we go. So we're going to let it dry, and then we'll see what we're looking like. So we've been adding a little more of the Drakenof Nightshade, just trying to build it up in the areas that we wanted to be darker, and I think I'm pretty happy with the result. A nice sort of blend of the colours there, the white with the pale blue and the dark blue. I tried to flood a little bit of the dark shade into those runes as well, just to make them stick out a bit. Like I said, you could maybe paint them white, add a little bit of white around the edges of them, but I think on this particular sword I quite like them dark. Next thing though we're going to do though is we're going to brighten up the sharp cutting edges, and so this is where the lighter white is going to come into use here. If you've got Scar White or any other sort of brighter white, this is it's lighter than the Corax White, and it's a bit more transparent as well, so it's quite nice for highlighting. They won't be extremely stark, but just light enough. I guess I'll add a little bit of that to the palette. It's quite thin already, this paint, so I won't need to water it down really. And I'm just going to load a little bit of this on the brush. I'm not going to overflow it, just enough. And I'm actually going to use the length of the brush rather than the very tip. Use the length of the brush like so, along the edge of the blade. So along the cutting edge, just to highlight that and sharpen that up. Just get the motion and then very carefully move it closer towards the blade. If you overdo it, just wipe it off quickly. It's not the end of the world. All the way around to the top, like so. And that seems to be pretty tidy. So I'm going to do this around, all the way around, and then I'll show you where we've got to. Okay, so that's the white cutting edge done. And see, that just sort of brings that out. If you feel like it's not light enough, add a little bit more. If you feel like it's a bit too stark, then water down a little bit of the Drakenof wash again, and just add a little bit of that. But I think I'm quite happy with that. I think that's quite nice actually. Next thing we're going to do, and you don't have to do this, but I'm going to give it a go, is we're going to take got an extra fine detail brush here, and being really careful not to overload the brush, just enough. What I'm going to do is I'm going to attempt a white line down the sort of center of the blade, where you can see where the blade sort of meets in the center, sort of lifts up along the length of the blade. I'm going to add just a little bit of white in there, just to try and pick that out and give it a bit more dimension. It's quite difficult, this, and this can be the moment where the rest of the work gets a little bit spoiled perhaps, but it's worth giving it a go. Have a go. I'm not going to draw over the runes here. I'm just picking out a little bit of that white just between the runes, just along that length there. A little bit on the top. Sometimes if you're quick, you can just wipe it off just like I did there. I'm going to bring just a little bit of that down from the tip. And if the paint's got a good consistency, then it should flow off the brush nicely for you to be able to do this. I'm going to try and just go over that a little bit. just to bring it out a bit more. Seems to be going okay. I've gone a bit thick at the end there, I think. What I can do, just wipe the excess of that off, and I'll try and sharpen that up and take a little bit of the wash afterwards, a little bit of the other colours, and just smooth that out around the edges of it where the line's gone a little bit, it's gone a little bit scribbly, a little bit thick there. So I'm going to let that dry, and then I'll bring a bit of the wash out and we'll correct that a little bit. But this seems to be going okay. Like I said, you don't need to do this. It's just a little finishing touch if you fancy having a go. I'm going to do a little bit of this on that skull shape, just to bring out some of the detail of the skull, just on the sharpest bits of the skull. Kind of imagining the skull has been engraved out of the ice as well. And there we go. So I'm gonna play with this a little bit more, try and have a go on doing it on the other side, and maybe correct this little bit on the top there, and then we'll see how we've gotten on. There we are. So I've been working on the white line down the length of the blade, and fixed that a little bit on the edge up on the tip there. So I think it's looking pretty good. There we go, and yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. So next thing, and the last step that we're going to do, is we're going to add just a little bit of gloss varnish, give it a real nice shine, make it look sort of wet and glistening. So just load up a bit of this, and it's literally just like paint. You just slop it on. A bit of varnish. It's going to also help to protect the blade, but we're really using it for the nice shiny effect. So I'm going to apply a nice coat of this, and then we'll wrap this video up from there. And there we go then, with the gloss now dry, that's the blade finished. And you can see there's a little bit of a sheen on there, a little bit of a shine. And there we go. Nice and simple, I think. Maybe a little bit tricky with that line down the centre, but this is but I think it's relatively straightforward, and that's really what I wanted to do, just to create a nice sort of straightforward, not too difficult approach, not too time consuming, to creating a nice shiny sort of frost blade here. Taking an influence from the weather feature, which is of course frost, so frost and ice, and I think it looks pretty good. Sometimes I might go a little bit lighter with the tones, with the colours. I quite liked the sort of darker icy feel to this one, with the darkness of the runes in there. But there we go. That is my approach to painting frost blades. And there we have it then. So that's another instalment of winter weather weaponry finished there for you, with, in this video, taking a look at my approach to painting frost blades. I hope this has been a bit of a help or an inspiration, or just of interest to you. If it has, then perhaps you'll check out the videos in the other videos in the series where I've done thunder hammers, lightning claws, and the next one coming up we're going to be taking a look at storm shields as well. So yeah, if you have enjoyed the video today, then a like and a comment would be very, very much appreciated. And if you'd like to see more of what goes on here inside the Frozen Fortress, then perhaps you'll also consider becoming a subscriber. And once again, whoever you are, thank you very, very much for joining me today. I'm Winter Wizard. That's Dimmu. And for now, keep it frosty.